Do you need help cutting mats? Hi, this is Kim with Mom's Creative Moments. Welcome back to my channel. A couple weeks ago, I had a couple of you comment, or it might have been the same person, I'm really not sure. I'm sorry, but ask about how I cut mats for my photos. And so today's 101.5 lesson is all about how I cut mats using both of the CM trimmers. So using the CM photo trimmer as well as the CM 12-inch trimmer. I'm going to share with you how I do that using measurements, as well as how I do that just eyeballing things, which doesn't make a lot of people, maybe makes you squeamish. I don't know. If you're not super precise, then hopefully you're okay with just eyeballing it, like I'm going to show you how to do today. If you are super precise, then by all means, please measure. It's perfectly fine to do it either way, whichever makes you happy. And I'm going to share with you our magic mat technique again, just so that you are aware and can utilize that when it works for you. All right. So let's check out my workspace and we'll get started. So here's my workspace for today, and we are going to just talk about some different aspects of creating mats. So this trimmer right here is operated like a guillotine. It stays sharp, is really wonderful for cutting your photos. It's also really great for cutting mats. But you can also cut mats using your 12-inch trimmer as well, and both can be utilized in a different way. So let me just share a few tips for each one, and we'll see if that solves the questions that you have. If it doesn't, then I need you to be very specific in the comments and let me know what it is that you would like me to cover. But I'm going to do my best to just kind of show you how I would do it. It's not necessarily the only way to do it, but I'll show you how I would do it, and then hopefully that will give you a better idea. First thing I'm going to talk about is a process that we in the CM world refer to as magic mats. Now, magic mats is a process where you can take a 12 by 12 piece of paper and you can cut anywhere from the tiniest 2 by 2 photo mats to a 5 by 7. You can get 4 5 by 7 photo mats from one 12 by 12 piece of paper. And if that sounds too good to be true, let me show you how we do that. All right, so I'm going to use this piece of avocado cardstock just because I happen to have it handy. Now, the trick to magic mats is whatever the dimensions are of the mat you're trying to create, you want to add the length or the width and the length together, and that's the size square you want to start with. So if you are making a 5 by 7, if you want 4 5 by 7 frames, which is the biggest that you can make using this method, using a 12 by 12 piece of paper, because 5 plus 7 equal 12, right? Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your paper, you're going to line it up at the 5-inch mark. This is the easiest way I have found. You can also line it up at the 7-inch mark if you want to get the arm on your trimmer out and play with it that way. Be my guest, okay? But I'm going to show it to you this way so I don't have to get the arm out. So you're going to line the paper up at the 5-inch mark out here. And then you're going to, I always, when I don't want to cut all the way through my paper, I start cutting in the middle and work towards the edge. And that's just a safety thing that I have started doing. I started doing it years ago. I don't, I guess, always do it, but I try to remind myself to do it more often than not, because that way it helps me in case somebody interrupts me or my brain wanders off and so I start thinking about something else. So I don't cut into what I don't want to cut, right? So we want to start cutting at the 7-inch mark here, which means the lower edge of my housing is going to be at the 8-inch mark. So I'm going to move this forward until this side of my blade housing is at the 8-inch mark. Then I'm going to push down and I'm going to push forward. All right. Then I'm going to take my paper and I'm going to rotate it. I can either rotate it clockwise or counterclockwise. It doesn't matter which way I rotate it. The key is I want to make sure it's against the bumper up here on top. I want to make sure I'm always measuring to the same number on the left-hand side. So I'm measuring to 5 again. I want to make sure I start down here again with the edge of my blade housing at 8, which is going to start my blade in the same place and give me my 5x7 frame. And I'm going to turn it. And I'm going to line this up at 5 again. And now it's not as important because you can see I'm right at 7 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and do like that. That gives me 7. I'm going to line this up at 5. It's going to give me 7 and 7. So there's my 4 5x7 mats. Okay, they're all the same size. Isn't that lovely? It's a great trick and it works no matter what size mat you are trying to make. So let's look at this. So if I was going to make mats for 4 3x4 photos, and I had a scrap of paper like this one, all right, that's just kind of, I don't know what the measurements are. I cut some titles out of this on my Cricut, so I have no idea. But I want to be able to make at least 4 mats for 4 3x4 photos or 4x3 photos. So if I add 4 and 3, I get 7. That means I need to start off with a 7-inch square. So I'm going to go ahead and move my paper to the 7-inch mark on my arm up here, keeping it straight so it's along my shoulder at the top. I'm going to cut that off at 7. Then I'm going to turn this and I'm going to line it up again at 7. So I'm starting with a 7-inch square. Okay. Now I can either measure to 4 inches or I can measure to 3 inches. Last time we measured to the short distance. Let's measure to the longer distance this time. So we'll measure to 4. And I want my cut to stop at 3 inches. So I'm going to start my cut at 4 inches, or my blade housing at 4 inches here. And I'm going to cut forward. And I'm going to turn it. Notice I am turning it in the counterclockwise way, and that's just because that's my habit of doing that. Wait a minute, what did I do wrong? Four inches, 3 inches. 4 inches, 3 inches. Okay, I'm going to turn it again, measuring to 4 inches. Something about this is not, what am I doing that's not right? Because that should have released already. Okay. Let me pull my head together, sorry. Okay, so 4 inches by 3 inches. 4 inches by 3 inches. All right, I'm not sure why this is not quite working out the way I expected it to. Let me Let me do this the rest of the way and we'll figure it out. Maybe I'm supposed to measure. Yep, that needed to go all the way to 5. I don't know why I'm not. Okay. So measure out 4 inches. Start cutting. Maybe it's different when you start with a bigger number. Huh? Okay, let's just play with that theory that maybe it's different that way. Sorry, guys. I've never had it not work out, and I'm trying to figure out what I did that made it not work out. Because clearly I've got 4 3x4 mats, so I don't know how I messed it up. Okay, let's try it again, shall we? Because that's gonna bug me. And here we are. Here I am recording this for you, so you can do it too. And it didn't work out. Okay. Hold on. Let me grab another piece of paper. Okay, so 3x4, 4x3. I'm just going to make this line straight so that we have a place to start from. All right. So 4 and 3 is 7, so I need a 7-inch square. Still need a 7-inch square, so we're going to make this 7-inch square. All right, so we are gonna let's measure to 3 this time and see if maybe that's just the rule and I've forgotten. And then we're gonna measure to 4 over here, or start cutting at 4. So we're gonna put this edge of the blade housing at 5. Now we're going to cut forward. Then we're going to turn and measure to 3. I think that is the rule. We just need to measure to the smaller number first. Because look at that. Now we've got our 1. I had just forgotten that was the rule. 2, measuring to 3 inches. 3, and here's our 4th one. Our 4 3x4 mats, and they're all exactly the same size. Pretty cool, eh? All right. So if your photo is going to be 3x4 and you want to add a mat around the photo, all right, let's talk about that. You can use the magic mats principle at the same time, okay? So what you would do is determine how wide of a mat you want. Do you want an 1/8 of an inch around the photo? Do you want a 1/4 of an inch around the photo? Do you want a 1/2 an inch around the photo? So how wide you want the mat is important, and however wide you want the mat, you need to double that and then add that measurement to each of the measurements, length and width of your photo. So I typically, when I build a mat, I want that mat to be just a highlight around my photo, unless I'm double matting something, and we will go into that in a different lesson. But typically I will just add an 1/8 of an inch around each photo, because then I'm taking less of the background away. So that means adding an 1/8 of an inch to each side means I'm adding a 1/4 of an inch to the total measurement. Okay, little bit of math, sorry. So that means that my mats are going to be 3 1/4 by 4 1/4. So that means that I need to add 3.25 to 4.25, which gets me 7.5, 7.5. Okay, so then I need a 7.5 inch square, and I would cut it the same way that I did this. So let's do that really quick. Okay, so we're going to need to start with a 7.5 inch square. So here's my 7.5. 7.5 inches. There we go. All right. So then we would simply do the measurements that we just talked about. So 3 1/4. I'm going to go out 3 1/4. I'm going to start cutting. I want the blade to cut at 4 1/4. So I'm going to start this at 5 1/4. See how this is panning out? Okay. Then we're going to go to 3 1/4, 5 1/4. And we would just work our way around like that. Now, if you don't need, there are not a lot of opportunities where I have sat down and said, wow, I need 4 mats and they're all the same size for this layout. But sometimes you do. Okay, so here's our 4 1/4 mat. 4 1/4 by 3 1/4. And there's my 4x3 photo placed right on top of there. And you can see it makes just enough to highlight, that picture. So I really like the 1/8 of an inch mat myself. But some people like a 1/4 of an inch. If you want a 1/4 of an inch, then you would add a 1/2 an inch to each measurement. A 1/4 of an inch for each side, which would make this your length would be 3 1/2, and your height would be 4 1/2. So then you'd add 3 1/2 and 4 1/2 together, and you would get 8. So you would need an 8 inch square to make magic mats in order to do a 1/4 inch mat all the way around the edge. Are you following that? I hope that's helpful. All right. Let's talk about using your trimmer and some of the baselines that you can look at on your trimmer to help guide your eye in case you just don't want to measure and you just want to put your pictures. I know that if you've watched my channel, you have seen me take a photo, trim it to however I want it trimmed, and then rather than cutting a mat and knowing that it's going to fit, I will take the photo and add it to my cardstock and then just cut my mat around it, which is another method of cutting your photos. So let's talk about that. I'm going to grab just a little adhesive here, and I am really sorry. My desk, if you were to see my workspace right now, you would just shake your head. My desk is crazy. I know it doesn't look like it because you're seeing the same thing here, and that's on purpose. But, all right, come on now. What's going on? There. Okay, I'm just going to add just a little bit of adhesive to each of these mats that we just made. And I'm going to pretend like they're pictures, all right? So this is our 4x3 picture. And we're going to pretend that I don't know the measurement of these. I'm just I want a narrow mat around these. So I'm going to eyeball how wide I want this mat on the side. Now I have two pictures that need the same width of a mat. So again, I am just kind of eyeballing where these need to be on the cardstock. I'm envisioning what double this width would be right here. And I'm sticking those pictures down to my cardstock, okay? Now, I want you to notice something. I'm going to turn this around so you can see. So where this edge is, which is the cut edge, I'm going to place that on my cutting line so you can kind of get an idea of markers, okay? So that's on my cutting line. Can you see where the photo is lining up? Do you see the dark blue and the matte gray and the fact that the edge of my photo is lining up with that edge right there? It's harder to see down here because you can't, right? But up here you can kind of see that visually that edge lines up with the dark blue. That's because that's roughly 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so then when I turn my paper to go ahead and cut, and I'm going to use the lower shoulder this time so that I can keep my paper straight. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the blue, the dark blue, and where it meets my mat, and I'm going to visually line up the edge of that photo with that dark blue edge. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow me to then cut I don't know why that didn't cut. That's weird. I don't have a groove in my mat yet. That's weird. Okay. Anyway, it's going to allow me to cut that without having to measure it. Now I can do the same thing by turning it this way and lining up the corner of my photo with that dark blue edge, right? And I can look at the top and kind of get an idea whether that's going to line up. It looks pretty good. I can also look over here at this edge and see if using my grid, if that looks straight, which it does not. So I'm going to adjust it just a teeny bit. Okay, and then go like that. Now, some of that adjustment has to happen because my photo is only hanging on by just a little tiny bit of adhesive. If I had adhered to every corner, then it would stay absolutely straight. It's for temporary purposes, I didn't do that. Okay, so then when I line it up again, you can see that both of those corners are lined up, and I can just come back in and cut. I must subconsciously not be pushing hard enough. And I can come in here and just center that blue line in each spot. Actually, I beg your pardon. The corner of this photo is what I need to be lining up. Like that. And then we're going to cut all the way through. Now, is that exact? No. You can see it's a little narrower here. This one's a little wider. But if you're okay with that, if it's not important to you to be absolutely exact, then this method works really well. It's very quick and it's not overwhelming, okay? And you can always, if it's just a little off, you can always pick up your picture and recenter it on the mat that you just cut until you're happy, okay? Especially if you've only tacked it down with one little bit of adhesive. So you can just sort of scoot it wherever you want to scoot it. All right? So that's how I do my mats without measurements. But if you know the measurement of your photo, then it's really easy, if you're okay with doing math, to go ahead and add twice the measurement of whatever the width of your mat is going to be. then cut your mat ahead of time. So, for instance, if you have a piece of paper like this and you know that you need a mat that's going to be 3.5 by 4.5, let's say, but you don't want to add your photo on, you don't want to add your photo on until you have made the mat, then what you can do is just go ahead and you have a 3x4 photo. You want a 1/4 inch border for your mat around your 3x4 photo. So you're going to cut your mat at 3.5 by 4.5. And that's going to give you your 1/4 inch border around. Okay, so I've cut this at 3.5. I'm going to turn this and cut at 4.5. All right, and then I've got a perfect border for my 3x4 photo. A perfect 1/4 inch border all the way around. Okay, so if you know your measurements, then it's sometimes it's easier to just cut your mat and then add your photo, but it really depends on what is going to be best for you. Okay, let's talk about the guillotine trimmer. I'm going to set that up there and grab this trimmer right here. All right, so this trimmer is, just going to remind myself which one is bigger. That one is the 1/4 inch one. Okay. This trimmer is, I think, in many ways more precise. However, you are limited in the size of paper that you can use. So you have to be able to fit your paper in the 9 inches that it's available for you to get that underneath the blade. Okay, so you can again take your pictures that you have already cut, if these were photos, and you can place them on here. And oh my goodness, look at that. This must be a 3.25 wide piece of cardstock. I didn't really plan that. I thought I was going to need to trim this just a little bit more, but I'm going to place my photos on there, knowing that I have an 1/8 of an inch mat on each side. Okay, then I'm going to take my trimmer, I'm going to place it under here. It's very easy to see because of this clear plastic guard that's in here. You can see right where you are going to cut, because on the very edge of the plastic guard is where that blade is coming down, maybe just slightly, ever so slightly beyond it. So a lot of people will go ahead and cut their mats on here because it's a little bit easier to see where you're going to cut. Okay, there's our 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to go ahead and cut these apart. So there are our perfectly framed photos, right? Okay, so you can do it that way, or you can, and this is what I like about this particular frame. Let's do a double mat for this one. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put just a little bit of adhesive on my photo, pretending that's my photo. Okay, we're going to put that on this single mat that we've made. All right, and I'm going to take this single mat and we're going to adhere it. This is so weird. I don't know what's going on with my adhesive today. It's like it got dusty. I think maybe that's what it is. Got dusty from all the construction we've had going on around here. All right. So I'm just going to place this right in the middle. I'm going to try to make it as straight as I can so that it's not as big of a issue. But okay, we're going to place that right on my cardstock, just anywhere. Okay. Now, this trimmer has a rather unique feature that your 12-inch trimmer does not have. On this plastic piece right here, that guard that you use to anchor the paper with, you have a plastic little bump that's right here. It's about 1/4 of an inch from where the paper's going to cut on the edge. So if you want to do 1/4 of an inch mat, then this works really great as a guide for you. Okay, so you can come in here, you can line up the edge of your photo or the edge of the single mat, whatever it is that you're trying to cut around. Line that up on where it's just coming up to that bump, okay? And then cut. All right, and then when you come around to the other side, and I'm turning mine all the way around on purpose because I have a straight edge over here and I don't have a straight edge over here yet. Okay, I'm gonna bring this dark sea green mat all the way up to the bump. I'm gonna hold the plastic down and I'm gonna bring the arm down to cut. Now I have a straight edge on that end. I can do the same thing here. Bring it over, line it up just before the bump, hold it down and cut, and do the same thing on this side. All right, and then I have a really nice double mat with the 2 different colors, and that bump has allowed me to, without measuring, get a perfectly even mat to go around that photo. No matter what the measurement of the photo is, I have a perfectly even mat. I love that trick. So finding little things about your trimmer that can help you line up your eye and then not have to do the measuring can be a super great, super easy thing and really make your life and your cutting life more fun, right? Because you can use what's right there in front of you. So I hope this has been helpful. And like I said before, if you have questions and and I didn't address them here, please make sure that you ask me in the comments so that next time I do a video on mats, I can definitely help you out, all right? I wasn't sure exactly what was needed, but I know I've been asked a couple of times if I would explain how I make mats, and I hope that was enough of an explanation to help you out. You can certainly measure to make your mat on this one as well. You've got all your grid lines, all your measurements, the top and the bottom, and that is certainly a possibility, certainly something you could do. You could even, well, that I can't do it with this one, but oftentimes I find it's easier for me to mat by adding my photo to the cardstock first and then cutting around it. But if that makes you nervous, then measure your photo and do the math. Or use the lines on your trimmer to help guide you so that you don't have to worry quite so much. Okay? I hope that's been helpful. Again, let me know. Thanks so much. And next time, I hope that, maybe not next time exactly, but soon, very, very soon, we're going to have a video up so you can see my new space and so that you have an idea of all the hard work my husband has been doing and my son to make this happen. and I'm so excited to share with you. It's turning out so well. So hopefully soon. Hopefully soon. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, I hope you have many more creative moments. Enjoy your day.